Time is 5:30. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission held at the Best Western Conference Room, 711 Main Street, Bandera, Texas, Thursday, October 28th, 2021. Agenda item 2. Do we have anybody that wants to do the invocation? Everybody will rise.
I could do one, but you can't do it.
Dear Lord, we ask you that you bless everybody present tonight. Bless the P&Z as they go over this special meeting. Bless everybody in attendance with grace and honor as they sit here and listen to everything that needs to be said and on their way homes tonight. And bless this great country and this great state. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Where's the flag?
I don't see the flag.
Where is it? I
So-
thought you had it in your hand a minute ago, Keely.
There it is.
Okay.
Hold on, sorry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. You know, I'll be seated. All right. Do we have any visitors signed up to be heard? Okay. On to agenda item 4, consent agenda. Approval of minutes from July 13th, 2021, August 18th, 2021, and October 14th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept as presented.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. All right, number 5, discussion and possible action on the following items. 5 Tech 1, discussion and possible action on approving or appointing officers. So as you all know, right now we have no officers. So we need to appoint some. Do we have motions?
I will, with what I've got on my plate, and oftentimes construed conflicts of interest, which is true, I will not serve as an officer.
Understood.
I would have to have more information.
Okay.
What all offices are you, you're talking about president, vice president?
President, Vice President, Secretary. We do have Keeley for the administrator.
Part of it, yes.
Mhm. Which means Secretary really doesn't do a whole lot other than fill in for the President or the Vice President when they're not. Absolutely. Basically, we just need officers so that we can hold actual meetings.
Legal meetings.
Okay. Can I nominate somebody?
Absolutely.
I nominate you as president.
Okay.
Please, help us.
All right.
You're better at the motions. You make a motion because I know you agree with me.
I'll second
Okay.
Leah's motion.
Okay, discussion.
This is,
I would like to see this be temporary, and I know we also have Mike who couldn't be here tonight, mostly because of the football game, but I would like this to be temporary, only because I'm the president of the EDC as well, and I don't think that,
Would you be
Chairing both.
amicable to modifying your motion?
okay.
So that we can become legal and have official officers, I would make a motion that any officers elected at this meeting would be for review of the positions again at the February meeting. That's a term of 3 months because this is a newly seated board. Is that fair?
I think that sounds great.
I think that sounds fair.
Are you
I'm in
agreement
agreement.
with
I
that
agree with
second?
your-
Yeah, I think too, if you get more information and what is all involved and what entails, could I do it or not, I don't know, because I'm new to this whole,
So the big thing for the president handles the meeting as far as chairs the meeting, goes through all the procedures and agenda items, things like that. Is responsible for reviewing the agenda prior to it being posted
yeah, and that's
and
why
making
I
sure that
guess
it's
I don't
complete.
Back into the
The vice president basically just helps the president in those positions. And the secretary just makes sure that everything's posted, even though Keeley from the city does the administrative portion for it, takes all of our minutes, does things like that. The secretary is the one that just makes sure that everything's good, reviews it before Keeley does all that, so. And then in the absence of the president or the vice president, steps up to the next position to help out. So if the president weren't here tonight and the vice president weren't here, then the secretary would be the one that would chair the meeting.
okay.
But yeah, really easy stuff with the P and Z.
So we're gonna make the motion clear on temporarily until January? Okay.
All right.
So all in favor of making any positions nominated and accepted at this meeting today would be effective through the November, December, and January meetings for review in February
Correct.
and possible action. Is that clear enough?
That sounds like it's absolutely clear enough. Is that exactly how you wanted to reword that motion?
Yes.
Okay. And you
She's really good
re-second
at
that?
I re-seconded.
Okay,
I do
any,
too, and that way I can, do I really want
So
to
if you
step
really,
in it?
Okay.
right, well, I mean, if you do step in, you can still step out
I
easy.
know what I'm stepping into.
exactly.
Right.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed?
Now we still need
Okay,
the bodies.
and we still need, okay. So that was the first motion, that any of them being temporary or
Correct.
up for review again in February.
Correct.
Okay, so President,
Do you still stand with your original motion for Jared? For that, for president, the nomination would be for Jared Wilcox to assume the leadership of the P and Z for the months of November, December, and January, and for review in February.
okay, so I'm gonna say Patricia made that motion.
That's why I said she's really good at it. She
You
always
like
has been.
senses it? Okay, do we have a second?
Yes, I second.
Okay, Leah seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. Vice President?
I'll do it till,
I would like to nominate Leah Clout as Vice President, up for review in February. Can I second?
I second.
Okay, Patricia seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. Okay, Secretary.
I guess it's me.
Okay. I would like to nominate Elaine Good as Secretary for that position to be up for review in February.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Patricia Moore seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. Okay. All right. Discussion and possible action on appointing a member to fill the alternate seat. Do we have applications?
Yes, he is here.
She's here.
Okay. And that is Catherine? Okay. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Thank you for applying. Okay. And you are currently a project manager or were a project manager? Okay.
I'm a consultant in the construction industry.
Mm-hmm. I understand you've got extensive background in this?
Yes,
Yeah?
20 years.
Wow.
Yeehaw.
You started young.
Yeah, not really. Thank you, though.
Okay. Okay, and you do live inside the city limits?
I do.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else need any further time to review the application?
Thank you for applying.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Would anyone like to ask any questions of our applicant?
How long have you lived in Bandera?
Now, this time around, I've been back 2 months.
Okay.
So, my son was a bulldog too. He got in a lot of mischief on the football field the last time we were here. But we lived in Lake Hills before. And
Okay.
then I moved back to Mississippi to raise them, finish raising them, and now I'm home. I'm an empty nester. I'm going on week 13.
All right.
Good for you.
You won't be empty nesting too peacefully if you come on board, and we hope you continue to stay on board.
This is fun. Construction, planning, zoning, real estate stuff, it's fun. I'm a nerd.
Cool, cool.
Any questions?
I have no questions. I'd like to make a motion that we advise city council to accept Catherine. I'm gonna miss
It's
it.
okay, Sepulveda. It's
Sepulveda, I knew how to
it's
say it,
stuck.
but it wouldn't do it right.
It's just been stuck there for 25 years, so I'm just left it alone.
As the alternate applicant to the P and Z.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to make recommendation to city council. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Elaine seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. Thank you very much. All right. And on that, moving to agenda item number 6. Number 6, the public hearing is posted for 6 p.m. So at this time, I am going to recess this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission until 6 p.m. when the public can all be here. The current time is 5:43 p.m. All right, the time is 6 p.m. I am reconvening the special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Leah Clout did have to step out for the remainder of the meeting, but we do still have a quorum. We are on to agenda item number 6, public hearing. And the Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing regarding the comprehensive master plan with Simple City Design. Sir?
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Lewis with Simple City Design. We're excited to be before you all tonight. This plan has been in the works for about 18 months now, and we're at a point where we're moving through the process. We have done a thorough analysis of Bandera and tried to really code in and figure out what keeps Bandera Bandera and what makes Bandera what it is and what makes it special. My property is meeting the current standards, or does it? Says the landowner. We love Bandera, but building Bandera is not our model, says a potential developer. You know, those are questions and statements that could be scary for communities when development's knocking on your door. Oftentimes, landowners don't fully understand what they have and what the rules on the books actually govern over their properties. And we believe that these questions have been resolved through this process. So what's happening here? The main goal is to keep Bandera Bandera. It's done through a new comprehensive master plan, which we'll go over, a thoroughfare master plan, updated zoning ordinance, updated subdivision ordinance, and then rezoning to a place-type zoning districts. We did this through gathering knowledge, through conversations with the community, by walking and studying all of the aspects of the city, walking up and down the streets. We used our experience collectively. We've got over 180 years worth of experience. Linda Humble, our team manager, had been a city manager for 30 years. I had been a planning director in the fastest growing cities in the country for about 12 years. Miloslav Sekit is a town architect. And so we collectively gathered our knowledge to where we weren't having to, we would measure twice, cut once. All of the rules that we extracted and created for Bandera are based off of Bandera, and we use y'all's creativity to get us to where we are today. We started by evaluating the natural environment, and it's y'all's biggest resource, the Medina River. It's lined with beautiful cypress trees. The cypress tree roots hold the banks in place, which stabilizes your soil. It's a wonderful resource. You all built this beautiful short block grid in a peninsula that meanders around the Medina River. And it's a great resource for you all, now and forever into the future. Bandera's got cowboys and cowgirls. You know, that was something we heard. Whether they're on horseback or now motorcycles, it's something that's real that lives here. In order for us to fully understand your community, we did what we call a DNA analysis. This is a physical and numerical extraction of the numbers that make up your building patterns, your street patterns, how far they sit back from the lots, how wide the buildings are, how wide are the lots, how much glass is at the ground floor, where are the houses placed, are they varying? And we did a very thorough analysis. We looked at your existing land use and zoning maps and studied those elements. We created different character areas to really dive into the details that made up Bandera and the places that you have and the places that you love. We've convened and we've had conversations and debates and dialogues about what's important to Bandera and what we need to do to keep Bandera what it is into the future. We heard early on this is a 50-50 town and they don't like change. We were very mindful to make sure that they were aware of that. We drew and sketched. As we studied these models, we looked at what standards created what type of development patterns, and we drew to show the possibilities that could be. These drawings we created match the standards that you have on the ground. We said, you know, what if and how might we develop this community going forward if development does start coming into this town? What does it look like? How does it feel and how does it function? We drew renderings to show you what the development code would create if a developer came in and wanted to build. Here's a sample of what may get built under the new code. We visioned redeveloping the old jail site and forming that as plazas and pedestrian ways as a family gathering opportunity for the community. All of these conversations led us to a conundrum of where you are, where you want to go, and some of the opportunities and problems that existed with your water and wastewater facilities, with your drinking water supply. And we needed to make sure that we were planning it appropriately so that we didn't overwhelm you all as the plan was getting created. We studied what we call the green print to the blueprint. We mapped out all of the existing patterns of the topography, where the rivers go, where you had built previously. We mapped out the hydrology and modeled it to see how you all implemented this grid on those topo lines. This is one of my favorite maps that got produced out of this. We think this is just such a beautiful snapshot of Bandera. You can notice the small block grid tucked into this peninsula that meanders through the Medina River. You can see where the steep slopes are, where development would be really difficult. And you can see why the settlers settled the areas of this community that they did. Next, we created a map of your existing building patterns. And we mapped every building, and then we overlaid it, looking at your hydrology, your floodplains, your floodways. And we looked at how they were sprinkled all over the lands. Most most structures are not centered in the lot, but rather they're tucked up on a hilltop. You know, they are on the highest topography line that is present on the lot. And so when we looked at your existing development standards, we noticed that oftentimes they were out of compliance with what you had on the ground. And furthermore, they were in direct conflict oftentimes of what you had versus what you wanted. They were very generic and created typical anywhere America types of places. And so we introduced a course correction. Through this course correction, we did a SWOT analysis, and we identified the things that were working well. What we picked up on is Bandera has been working and it's so efficient in the way that it's been using its resources since the date that it was settled. You all cash finance your projects, and you don't issue a lot of debt. It is true to cowboy culture. It's unlike a lot of cities that we go to that have issued tons of debt, and they're trying to recoup their debt by trying to chase it with more growth, which creates more debt. which needs more growth, which creates more debt, and the cycle goes on, and you all have been very fortunate to not chase that model. And so we identified real opportunities for you all going forward. The overall conclusion it came to was a plan called Bandera 2040 True to Your Roots. It's a 21st century integrated comprehensive master plan and development policies. We got all of the data that we extracted from this community and put it into a plan so that it provides you a path forward and a vision forward so that it can be implemented seamlessly. It's intended to protect the natural setting, keep Bandera Bandera, preserve the rural lifestyle that everyone really loves here, to create a cohesive walkable environment from the river to North Main, and to protect the timeless nature that Bandera instills. When you arrive here, you get this sense of timelessness, this authenticity that can't be contrived. It's super real and it's got to be carried forward. In order to make sure that that occurs, the plan's got intent statements into it. And so the intent statements are from the rural intent. We created neighborhood intent, which is where people reside. And then downtown intent, which is your core services. And it links by Highway 16 or Main Street throughout your community. And it's this linear core that provides the services for the citizens and intertwines into the plan. As we started looking at your transportation thoroughfare master plan, we went back to this map to see what would happen and how might this community build out its street network going forward. If development did show up, it was fundamentally important that you all understand how development would take place. Typically in communities, what's going on right now is developers come in, they submit a subdivision plat. The subdivision plat meets the minimum standards of the community, and they establish your roadway network, which is generally cul-de-sacs and what's called our major arterial, which is a one-way roadway, one major roadway that connects all the cul-de-sacs that gets traffic in the morning and gets traffic in the evenings. It's got peak flaws. So we studied your grid and the patterns, and your grid are 335 feet by 335 feet, and those short blocks are really integral to making Bandera what it is. And so we introduced a plan for you all to have a thoroughfare master plan so that when development does show up, you can continue that building pattern that you have going forward. This plan is intended to have the darker red lines that you see as mandatory street network, and then the lighter lines in the back could be developer driven, but we just showed a framework for how the blocks could lay out. These lines will need to move as it happens based off of topography, based off of trees. However, what we did do is make sure that we dodged big hillsides, and we integrated these road networks in places that were fiscally viable options. We created a seamless journey to get this plan adopted. We, as you all fed into this and built this plan up with the community conversations, with the dialogues, the debates that you had, we would take these policies back to City Council and vet them to make certain that the priorities that got written in the plan were emulating the conversations that we were hearing from the community. And that was really critical in order to map out an action plan. You all have a $15 million wastewater treatment plant that's going to be needed, and you don't have a lot of debt capacity otherwise to issue on big projects. And so what we tried to do is really introduce low-tech, bite-sized pieces where you could hold brick cells, where you could work with private entities to create these, string lights across streets, real low-tech types of things, fix it with paint and those types of facilities. We mapped out a full action plan for the community going forward, which is in here. We wondered how you might solve small area flooding by existing creeks and tributaries that you have crossing through the community. This is a visioning draft. It's not real. It's not taking anyone's property. We stayed within easements and we stayed on these channels, but we just said, there's opportunities to utilize trails and connections to really create identifiable places, and so we drew those and integrated those into the plan for you as well. The ultimate outcome, though, is leading back to coding in Bandera, and the current zoning standards you have, which are in the packets back there, look like they came from San Antonio or from some other city. They had generic 20-foot setbacks, 10-foot minimum setbacks, minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, their stories, 50 feet or 3 stories, whichever is less. Block lengths range from 600 to 1,200. It was really arbitrary rules and really stringent guidelines that were directly in conflict with what you had on the ground. You were requiring things that you said that you didn't like. And what we did is we coded in the elements that you like. Before the public hearing this evening, I spoke to a gentleman who was explaining his property to me, explained his zoning, and after we went over it, his building was non-conforming under your old codes and is now conforming under your new codes. The intent is to code in what you have so that people can build and have the flexibility to achieve what they want. For example, many of the standards are flexible. In the urban core, for example, your front yard can be from 2 feet to 15 feet. In the previous code, it said 5 feet. So you had to put the building at 5 feet. What this does is it allows for the buildings to move around on the lots. It allows for creative ideas, whether they want a courtyard out front, or if they want to save a pecan tree. Now they can move the building around to actually preserve the natural environment that exists on the ground today. This is your existing zoning map as it exists on the books today, and what we did with the rezoning notifications is a translation, and the translation classifications are also on the sheet that was handed out this evening, from what classification you're going from and what classification you're going to. And we also created character districts that were integrated into the comprehensive master plan. This makes it to where you have bite-sized areas. These different areas of Bandera function different, they look different, they feel different. If you're in the Heritage District down between 10th Street, 13th Street, Maple, and Pecan, it feels different than when you're where Highway 173 comes in and up your Mulberry Street. And so all of these contexts were coded. We then studied where most people live, and we called it the Settlers District. And the Settlers District has specific standards. So the goal is to write development standards that emulate the patterns that exist on the ground. What we heard when we got here is, we don't like change. Well, if you don't want change, the rules you have on the books guarantee change. If you don't want change, we've coded in what you have now into a series of really easy to use bite-sized tools. The new place type map would look like this, and instead of thinking about creating zoning classifications, which is your automobile dealerships go here, and your tattoo parlors go here, and your banks go here, and your credit unions go over there. It's about creating places, and the places are very identifiable. Place type 1 is nature. It's a place where you go in, you sharpen your claws, you stare at a fire, and you leave. You don't dwell and live in nature. Usually it's lands that are unsuitable for development. Rural is when you start to have sparsely settled lands. People have ranchettes, food production, those types of things. And so this will help preserve the natural beauty that you have. And so now you've got a rural classification coded back into the city. Place type 3 is a neighborhood. It's where you live. It's real easy. It's generally low density, detached housing types that vary in style. They vary on the lots where they live and where they move. It supports by civic spaces such as schools, libraries, places to worship. And then it's generally adjacent to higher density, which may be still residential or house form commercial types of structures, which is P4 mix. Functions as a transition area from the core area, which is the main street, into the neighborhoods. And it shows this transition area. And then your core area is the highest density. Generally, the buildings are brought right to the street. It's got a continuous row of buildings. The buildings are in a line. They mostly have awnings going out over the sidewalks, which create this outdoor living room. Generally, there's glass at the ground level so that people can see in the buildings. You have signage hanging down below that informs the walkers and the passerbyers what they're about to arrive to, so the stores they're going to. And because of the grading, you've got steps that step down into the right-of-way. This area here we call the public and the private realm. And those two lines of delineation are really critical. It's about how the buildings relate to the streets. And so your document is actually written into the public realm standards and the private realm standards. If you're on the private property, you've got private development rights. If you're in the public realm, then the public realm standards supersede. It's the standards for the public spaces. It's the city's wheelhouse. It's where your tax dollars get allocated and spent. And you've got civic space. Civic space are the parks, the trails, the city facilities, counties, and then schools. Each of the districts that we talked about have a district vision and set of goals, and then they have the standards to create the district directly adjacent. So whether you're an existing landowner, or you're a resident looking to move to town, or you're a small developer that wants to do a development, the tools, the vision, what the community wanted to see happen is on one page, and then your rules for how to do the development are on the next page, or your rules that govern your land are on the next page. And so the intent is not to get this lost. Oftentimes, cities will have a comprehensive plan, and they'll write it 10 years ahead of doing their development standards, and their development standards are out of compliance constantly, and so the community's battling about what they actually meant and what they're aspiring to do. Well, we coded it, and then we extracted the physical patterns that you have on the ground and wrote them back into your development standards so that the buildings and the building types that get built emulate what you have. And they go in the districts where you have them. And if someone wants to change this, then they go through a public conversation, and they come back before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council to request modifications that requires another public conversation. The way that the code is regulated, since it's not regulated by land use any longer, is it's got building types and place types. We have edge yards. This is your typical house. It means that you have a front yard, you have side yards down the side, and then you have a backyard. They're allowed as houses, duplex, triplex, and bunk houses, which is an accessory dwelling unit or a backyard house. They're allowed in certain place types, and the place types tell you what you can do. So when you are wanting to build a house or remodel a house, or let's say that you have a vacant lot and you want to build something, you can come down to the city and you say, I want to build a house, I'm in place type 3, and I'm in the outpost. That's your development process. And they say, well, that's great, you can pick a frontage type and you can pick a house type that you like, and here's how you can go ahead and get your permits. There's some examples of those individual classifications. One of the other things we introduced is called a side yard. These came from Charleston, South Carolina. They're a great product. You don't have real side yards that are built here, but what they do is they utilize the land really well, and we only made them allowed in place type 4 and 5, but based off of your topography and the way that they build, it makes a lot of sense. This is oops, let me zoom in here. A side yard example. So when you're walking down the street, it looks like that's the front door of the house. But in fact, it's actually a front door to porches. And so the porches face the side yard. And so what it would allow is whoever's building the house to build it up on the high ridge of their property, and then have the porches overlook the lowlands. And so it's a really useful building type. And then zero lot. I learned that building is the smallest hotel in the state of Texas, is what I've heard from some of y'all's locals, and I think that's real cool. So we coded that in for y'all to build. Zero lot would be only allowed in place type 4, which is that transition area from 11th Street to 13th. So that was where that would be allowed. And then you have rear yard buildings. This is a rear yard building that we're in now. So basically the building's brought to the street edge and the parking or the yard goes in the rear. All of these buildings are called rear yard buildings. You'll notice the dark blue is the building footprint. This is the sidewalk, and there's your street. And they are allowed under place type 4, place type 5, and then they would be allowed in live work where appropriate. And so that's how that would work. They're for commercial buildings or row houses or townhomes, if you'd call them that, and also bunk houses or backyard houses. And so you can see those are only allowed in place type 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to talk a little bit about bunk houses real quick because it's important. We went to the City Council and asked for policy direction on the square footage allowances for bunk houses, as well as how they would be handled for accessory dwelling units for Airbnbs. The council gave us policy direction to allow for 800 square foot structures, and if you wanted to have it as an Airbnb, in place type 3, you would have to reside on site. You must live on premises. You can live in the back house or the front house, but you must live on your property on that site in order to rent it out as an Airbnb. You can have them as both long-term rentals, but that was the policy direction from the council. I just wanted to be clear about the functionality of how those would occur. The next building type is a courtyard. It's where the building goes all around the actual yard and you have a courtyard in the center of the building. Those would be allowed as patio homes, a house, and then if it's going into a building type that's an apartment, a commercial building, or a mixed-use building, they're only allowed in the urban core place type 5. And here's some examples of a live-work unit, example of a courtyard building, and then example of a loft building. So basically you could have ground floor retail, ground floor office with residential or office or retail above. The goal was to allow the market to drive these trends, but as the market comes in, it doesn't overwhelm your system. It's built in a way that emulates the patterns that you have, so that when they do come in, they would have to build in the same manner that you've got. And then you have a building there that is a mixed-use building with the porches that go over, it's called a gallery, over the sidewalk as well. And there's a patio house, I don't know why that popped up last. So with that, we hope that you all say my property is now conforming to Bandera that I know and love, and we hope that the landowner says that, and that the future developer says we love Bandera and building Bandera is our model, and that's what we've coded in. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions that you all may have. Thanks.
Awesome. Very cool.
I got a question.
Please.
My name's Dick Atwood. I don't live here. I'm in the process of building a house here on the corner of Pecan and 7th. Early stages, planning in the house. I live out in Medina. I've been here in this county 20 years. I'm a real estate developer from Fort Worth. Mr. Lewis, do you know how big Bandera, the city of Bandera, that's what we're talking about. Do you know how big it is? He said. How big is it?
It's 3.2 square miles, I think.
1.2.
1.2, yes,
Yes, it's 1.2 square miles. That's what we have. I'm a taxpayer here, but I'm only paying property tax, and I will be paying on my house when it's built. I'll probably sell my land out in Medina, I'm not sure. Okay, your town, you know the population here?
900.
Used to be, it's kind of short, but it's close to 900. Round numbers, good number.
Yeah.
What you've got here, and I'm a real estate developer, Fort Worth, Texas. I know you came out of Austin. I looked at your website.
San Marcos.
Pardon?
San Marcos.
No, that's where your office is, but you were working in Austin, correct? Before?
Oh, previously, yes, sir, yeah.
Yeah, that was on yeah, I looked you. 1.2 square miles in the city. You think developers are gonna come here and develop the town? Where they're gonna tear down buildings? I know that the zoning plan and all that. You had your zone. You didn't have zoning before it was a city. Do you know when it became a city?
I don't know the year off.
1964.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
Became a city. We didn't have zoning before that. All right. I've only been coming to Bandera. I've lived here 20 years in the county. I've been coming here since 1955. You talk to the tourists. Why do they come here? Because there is no change. So, you've got new zoning rules. There are several people, this young lady right here, questions how to zone on there for her property. I don't know if it's really going to make any difference at all. You know, we don't have any space at all. We have 1.2 square miles. It's not like the San Marcos, I don't know the county name. Como, what is it? Hayes County. Or Travis County, working out of that. Fort Worth is Tarrant County. Tremendous amount of property. Tremendous amount of development. I personally been coming here for a long, long time. There's been things. I don't see any change at all. There are people here. I don't know about this room, I know some of you people know me, some don't. Do you really want to see change? Is that what we want? Bandera has one industry only, the dude ranches. They have nothing else, tourism. Do we want to turn into a Fredericksburg? You don't have the buildings. Do you want to turn into a Bernie and be overrun? Or do you want, I mean, I'm going to be talking absolutely out of line on wanting no development. And you mentioned, sir, when the developers, or maybe they'll come. I don't see it. I don't see there's a development city owned. In the county, yes. We have land in the county. There has been development outside the city. But here in the city, what you're doing, I'm a taxpayer in the city and the county. I don't see where you're going with this. And of course, that's yes. We got two questions.
Well, I'll let Jared answer first.
I was going to ask if I could address that concern really quick.
Sure.
The biggest reason for this is right now, with the way the current zoning is set up, is almost every building inside the city limits is legal non-conforming.
Okay.
So, God forbid, worst case scenario, one of those houses is lost. That person,
What are you talking about?
fire, tore down, something happens,
Yeah.
that person goes to rebuild their house with the insurance money. They can't right now, with the way all the codes are written, they can't rebuild their house as it was. That is one of the biggest problems.
Are you city council? City council. You wouldn't allow it in somebody's house right now?
The zoning won't allow it.
You wouldn't make a variance?
Oh, so we have to do that for every single building in this town, then what's the point of that?
What-
So everybody has to come.
What this is doing is it's bringing everything that creates Bandera, and it's realigning all of our ordinances to fit what Bandera already is.
Meaning
so-
if it burnt down, you could rebuild what you had by the new zone.
Without a variance.
You know, I've done a lot of work in Tarrant County, not just Fort Worth, but there's a lot of cities there. And reasonable stuff, I've never been turned down on a variance, if it's reasonable. And rebuilding your house the way it was, I can't help but think that city council are reasonable people.
Now,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jared.
Bandera County is the number 2 flash flood prone county in the world, or area in the world. Number 2 flash flood prone area in the world.
You said world?
In the world.
That's correct.
See,
Our world? Okay, I don't know that, really. I don't know.
yeah, okay. So,
Okay.
what is the exact name of the agency that came in and put all the sensors here?
Yep, that's the reason we were chosen.
GCIS.
Okay.
They came and put all kinds of sensors all over the Medina River, specifically
Near my house.
because of that.
Okay.
We are the test bed for this awesome new software that they've developed.
No.
So worst case scenario, there was flood, in the 70s? Predated me, so excuse me for not remembering the exact date. But the flood of 78, where the water actually came up Main Street, and my old store right on downtown had the water lines about 2 feet up the walls of where that flood from the 78 was.
Main Street flooding?
Yes.
There were fish flopping in there.
Yeah. So, and my old store building on Main Street was pier and beam, so it was already elevated up, and then the water line was another 2 feet up the walls on that. Imagine the kind of destruction that has, and then for every one of those homeowners that was affected by that to have to go to city council for a variance and the amount of variance work, whereas we can just realign all of our codes and ordinances for P&Z to fit all of that. What Bandera actually is. This is bringing it all back in line.
My question is the word, Patricia.
Well, my question, and I am not a developer and not a planning and zoning specialist, but ordinance specialist. If you have looked at the city of Bandera ordinances, they're uninterpretable.
I agree with that.
All right, this makes ordinances interpretable, gives people options, and let's say I decide I want to sell my house. I've got 1/3 of an acre. on my house.
Okay.
Okay, the new owners want to totally tear it down like you see in Fredericksburg and so forth and so on. They would be limited to re-putting a structure on that property that resembled what was already there in terms of appearance. Not the exact design, it gives 5 or 6 different options. They could pick which side where they wanted to build their property. But right now, as Matt has said numerous times, or Simple City has, we have properties that, I think, what's our setback supposed to be, 25 feet?
In residential.
In residential area, we've got them from 5 to 25 feet.
That's fine, then
Well-
they can tear your house down.
Well, let me just finish, please. Let me just finish a minute, Dick, okay? We have run into challenges, I think everyone in this room has experienced the challenges with code enforcement. So we have a code enforcement officer, by law, he's paid to enforce the codes that are on the books. So think of the time for this little town to deal with all the variances.
Very little in a town this size.
Oh, we've got,
Oh,
Very little. It's a town of 850 people.
well, we're all very vocal, just like you are.
It's not gonna happen once, but anyway, that's not my problem. My problem that I see here, as a taxpayer in this city, is this working what we're doing? And for you, Mr. Lewis, what's this all costing?
Well, I mean, that's something, so we can open records. But I think.
I couldn't find it.
No.
I went to your
You
website.
can request it through open records.
Okay,
It's all-
I'm
it's all
refreshing it right now.
Yeah, at the city hall.
But
You
is
can't
it
tell
worth
us.
it? We're bringing everything back into compliance, sir. This community has spoken. They have been heavily engaged. This is our first time meeting you, sir. They've had those dialogues that you brought up earlier. Those conversations have been held many
Okay,
times over and
yes, yes.
written into
So
this
then you
plan.
know, then how much is it costing with your company?
Well, the first project out of the box is going to be a cash advance for Bandera. So again, sir, I'm not.
It's your company,
discuss
correct?
that.
I think that
Record, the public hearing is not, you can request it through open records to City Hall.
The owner's sitting right here. I don't understand why.
Because what we've approved versus just.
I'm not saying, I just want to know what it
That's the
is.
way you do as a citizen. is
This
request
item's
through
not on
open
the
records.
agenda either, sir. So we're here to hear the
Yeah.
zoning from the way we're on the plan.
Where do I go to get that number?
City Hall.
Okay, and they'll have it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, yeah, never mind. Good, this young lady wants to talk. I've heard this enough.
I have a question, Tony. I am down in the heritage zoning, which, I'm just a resident, I'm a poor retired person. I know it, I've heard now that if I try to sell my house, and when someone buys it, it has to be a commercial.
no,
No.
no.
Or they're gonna have a hard time getting a
Don't
loan.
answer yet. She is actually currently in a commercial slash residential area right now. Your side of 10th Street from me, that whole thing already is business slash residential.
Yes.
So they're not changing anything. Just because they called it Heritage and Settler, it's just a name for it, and
It's
you're.
a mix.
It is a mix, which you're currently at a mix. You are currently, your current zoning is on the south side of 10th Street, which your current zoning is considered, I believe, a
B2.
B2.
It's the same as 11th Street Bar.
It's, right, and it's a B2, which is a neighborhood commercial, which means, and so in our current zoning, it has a long list of things that you can and can't do, and it's business, and so you're on the cusp. You're that segue going from commercial to residential. So nothing in the heritage has changed, and actually, you're gonna have more freedom with your property under this than you would under the one you've got.
I don't want to. I mean, I'm fine just the way it was, but.
Well, you're not gonna see any change, so if you're fine the way it was, then you're perfectly
Then
fine.
why are we changing it if they're?
Well, because it's bigger than just your property, it's the whole city. And I'll give you an example, on Cedar and 6th Street, there was a residence that asked for a permit to get a garage, and they closed it in for an apartment. And that permit never went through, and now they're using it as a bed and breakfast in a single-family dwelling, in a single-family zone, where there's one family, and it's illegal to rent that out because it's all on the same piece of property. So under this, they will have more freedom and no longer be illegal. And what it takes for our code enforcement to listen and to take phone calls from people's neighbors complaining about people that are violating these ordinances, and then going and knocking on the door and saying, okay, we have a complaint, what are you doing, blah, 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 and then that person lying, well, we're not really renting it, okay, well, what's the sign for the bed and breakfast outside? Is it really not a bed and breakfast and you're in a single family zone? And then you go into all of the time and the money and the variances, and it also costs the residents money to apply for a variance. So if we're just going to, yeah, so I can show you exactly what that is if you like, if you haven't figured out what it is. But all this is doing is giving us as property owners a little more freedom to do with our property. And each zone is reflecting what it is today. Like a certain amount of, the one I just bought is the same as yours. The one that the residence that I'm in is in the single family and it's on that side. So what it would do is it would allow, and it's true, because what Dick was saying is people don't necessarily want to come in and develop, but we have, the property owners here are not always residents here. So the population of our town is very different. We don't have people that are living here and being involved in our day-to-day business. They live in Houston, they own a property here. They really couldn't care less, right? But what it's going to do is when we do rely on tourists, that if someone wants to put a mother-in-law suite in their backyard, we are going to allow them to do that as long as the density of their property is under a certain percentage, that they're not utilizing the entire thing. It's going to still reflect what other properties in their area are doing, so that way we don't have to listen to people go, well, they have it. Okay, well, they built it in 1952, and we quit letting them in 1956. So because they built it in 1952, and now all of a sudden you have this idea in 2021, we're not going to let you do that. But now we are going to let them do that, as long as their intent is to maintain the integrity of the area that they live in, which is a low density versus high density versus cusp, commercial, residential. So all of this is in this, and it's going to reduce the impact on the city hall. To keep people from complaining, you know, it's going to give them more flexibility, but it's going to maintain our look and feel of our city. And it, to me, I know this is very costly, but it takes that to get somebody to come in, understand who we are, tell them that we don't want to change our rural lifestyle or our city. We want to sustain what we have, and we want to live here. We don't want developers to come in and level our character and put new buildings in or put 7 in one lot. We want to keep them from doing that. And so what Simple City has done is they have listened to us because we have screamed. We do not want to change our authenticity. We do not want to be Fredericksburg. And every time they compared us to Fredericksburg, at least 6 people said, we don't want to be Fredericksburg. Who told you we want to be Fredericksburg? So I believe Matt understands and his people understand that we do not want to be Fredericksburg. And I believe that they've done a fantastic job of listening to us scream and dig our heels in, and they finally came back and said, okay.
Yeah,
Here's what we got.
I've got 3 properties that don't meet any of the specifics in zoning. None of them. So if anything happened to them, I would not be able to rebuild. And no, they would never give me a variance because my properties are so unique. This gives me a whole lot of flexibility. And
But still maintain the percentage of density on your
That's
property
right.
within your neighborhood,
Right.
but still give you the flexibility to do what you want to do.
I came
The other piece I was
in here
gonna say
negative,
is
and
that-
actually I'm looking real positive.
Capitalizing
tried to
on
create-
tourism is another thing. Let me, Matt, just, I was gonna say this part too. So capitalizing on tourism, if percent, like, for instance, Dick, your property at 7th and Pecan, if you wanted to build that with a certain percentage of density, maybe make a smaller main house and have some smaller houses in the back, as long as your percentage of density is under, I believe we came up with 40%. Is the-
60 in
60.
P4 and place type 3 is
Yeah, his is like is back in the single family.
okay,
his property.
40, that's right.
So what it would allow you to do would be you'd be able to capitalize on that tourism. So that even if you don't want to, but you as a property owner, because what happens is it was hard for us to get a hotel here it's hard for us to maintain a hotel because of the flexibility of tourism. Like, we're really busy, we need like 5 times the accommodations we have 4 weekends a year. And so it's hard for people to maintain a business like that year round. But if we would allow people that lived in our city to capitalize that, build a little house in the back and rent it out when they can, to not only improve their income in our town that is based on tourism, and we don't have a lot of jobs to sustain a lot of lifestyles, or we have a lot of retired people that might be willing to do that, then they could supplement their income without changing the look and feel of the city. And so I think that was another key thing, a win for me to look at it like that as well as like a multi-generational property, not just income, so.
One concern, in B4, or the P4, that bar restaurant, a bar could go right in across the street.
But that's already where you are, and your property has not zoned changed since you bought it. It's been that zoning for how long?
I can have a bar restaurant.
Yes, ma'am. With
Well,
current-
no, somebody applied for that in that 2-story next to me years ago.
It says you can have a restaurant in B2,
Yes, you can.
under your current regulations.
Yeah, I can show it to you in the zoning, it's already good.
And I also believe that what we've done is created something that's predictable and flexible. Your B2, which has a minimum 25-foot setback, now it would be between 5 and 15. It's got more, you have 10-foot side yards, 20-foot rear yard. Now it's set by the International Building Code. It's flexible so that you can move it around. Your stores and all of the restaurants and things that are regulated under B2 are classified in here. And under the new regulations, all that is focused on is the way that the buildings are related and building the appropriate building types so that when that did happen. And I understand what you're saying, sir, is what we're trying to do is re-legalize the town. That's what we're doing. We're re-legalizing the town. And as you said, that gentleman here, right when I got here, we walked through his property and we re-legalized the town by doing this analysis. And so that is the intent. We believe that we've captured Bandera and it will preserve Bandera in its authenticity. And I invite you to read the plan. It's easy to come in here and punch holes and stuff, but until you read it and understand the community's voice, that's what it's going to take to prevent Bandera from becoming a tract home places is these types of regulations and these types of flexibility yet predictable environments.
And all throughout, just a couple of months ago, we had somebody come in that wanted to develop a tract of land right here in the center of town and wanted to do something with it. So there are developers coming in wanting to do stuff in town.
We had 3 of them at one of our city council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And what are they gonna build in?
Well,
They haven't come back and said anything yet.
that hand hadn't been played yet.
Yeah,
Well, then,
so,
well, if it's empty land you're talking about.
yeah,
Where?
partially.
There was no specific
Nothing.
change or mention.
Yeah, but there are developers that are coming in and saying, hey, I want to do this and making presentations to P&Z and to the city. So that is something that's happening. It's just,
It's very short, but don't, yeah, well, sure.
but the big thing-
I mean, the dollar store put in, this place
Oh,
put
yeah.
in.
but huge things like what you said. We're 1.2 square miles. Right now, we've got 9 different zones on the books. We're 1.2 square miles with less than 900 people. And we got 9 different zones. This simplifies our zoning. And I don't know if you've read the current zoning that's on the books. We've got ordinances that conflict with each other directly.
I wouldn't doubt that.
So this simplifies everything and the things that Simple City has gone through and done.
So it's finished.
What's that?
The zoning is all finished, this is
This, well,
finished.
it still has to go up for final
Council.
approval from the city council. But this simplifies it, it re-clarifies everything and makes it easy for people to read. There's nowhere where somebody's gonna go battle it out and go, hey, right here, it says this. And then P and Z or city council turn around and going, yeah, but right here it says this, and we're going with the more restrictive of them or the less restrictive of them. So there's none of that type of stuff going on.
That's fine, I understand what you're saying, but there's always variances, I get it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, there is, but, yeah, they've done so much more than just this portion for us. When it comes to, you may not be interested yourself in putting a bunkhouse in your backyard for extra income, but a year and a half ago when you went through and checked everything, the city was looking at the Airbnb side, because that was a huge thing that was going on with the planning and zoning was Airbnbs. I think y'all found like 86 or something of them through all the different websites that you could find.
That's an overstatement. We did find a lot that weren't actually, weren't paying hotel occupancy tax, but it was a significant uptick in the amount that we found, like, oh, look at that, and we didn't realize that we had that many in town. And this will help us with keeping track of all that stuff too.
So not only help with keeping track of, but help with generating hotel taxes from it, but also help any individual in town who lives here that wants to supplement that income. Another one of the things that got brought up from another simple city, the median household income for the city versus, what it costs to actually live here. So with as many tourists that come here to enjoy the dude ranches, the ranch life, the country way of life of Bandera, it makes sense to be able to tell people, hey, if you live in your house and you want to build a bunkhouse and you meet all these criteria, why not? Capitalize on the big weekends, biker rallies and Mardi Gras when there's not enough hotel space in town and you want to rent something like that out and make a little extra income that month. It helps out everybody in town. So.
I'd like to address another issue. We only have less than the 900 population in the city. So if you take away the children under 18, if you will, that can't vote, and the senior citizens that are not voting anymore, let's say your population dwindles even further. There is a dire need for affordable housing in general. There's a dire need for employment in this county and city. Why did the OST close on Tuesdays and Wednesdays afternoons? No employees. Why?
Two different things.
No, they're not. Let me finish where my thought is going, Nick. If people would build these and offer them at an affordable rate to live in, we could capture more employees. We could also, we all are sitting in here and talking about tourism. Everybody in this room knows my job is to bring tourism to Bandera County, but we can't service it unless we have the people. We also can't move forward with any type of infrastructure unless we have an interested, voting public that attends and listens to meetings. The things that are being attended at city council, such as the sewer, the water issues, the roadways, those are equally important. That would allow some more permanent people to potentially move in this community that are of a voting age. The younger generation do not look for the homes that you and I are used to. They are perfectly content with a 600 to a 1,500 foot house. Looks at the studies, 800 foot. And let's see if we can get some incubators in here business-wise.
But you're not going to change the population very much.
No, but anything would help when you get that low of a voting population.
So Mr. Lewis said it, I believe Mr. Lewis said it at the last meeting. Our number one export for the city of Bandera is our youth.
Right.
Because 18-year-olds that just graduated high school cannot get a job in town and afford to live in town if they don't want to live with their
A lot
parents.
of towns like that, but if I had a young son in Bandera High School, And then Dan sure he got out of this county and go get a career somewhere else.
Well, and that's your thinking, and I believe the same thing. Because
Okay, then we're in agreement on that.
I believe the same thing for my daughter when she gets that age. Not everybody does. And a lot of our youth wants to stay here. And when they were interviewed, said the number one reason they don't stay here is because they can't afford, if they get a job here in town, they can't afford to live here. Because what are the median, the average housing price versus what the median household income is, when you broke that down, Mr. Lewis, that was, the average housing price should be,
I cannot recall the number off the top of my head, I'm sorry, Commissioner. I have it, it's in the plan though.
basically it's 3 times
It's
what
3
your,
times the amount.
what your annual income is.
And this was 4 times.
And
Yeah, generally you can finance 3 times, but y'all's was 4 times.
Right.
so if you could build that in-law suite, casita, bunkhouse, whatever, in your backyard, and rent that out to an 18 or 19-year-old that wants to stay in the area,
And why do they want to stay?
a lot of them love Bandera.
I understand.
I've been all over the world, and I chose to retire right here in Bandera.
Well, I've only been in 24 countries,
But
but I can't make a living here either.
There are people that do drop out and come here, and I hope I have been an effective worker inside the community, and I was not at retirement age. The area did draw me, okay? There are people and reasons that people will come to this area and stay.
That's true.
And let's just talk about our own lives. I grew up in Pearsall, Texas. I couldn't wait to get the heck out of Pearsall, Texas. You're shaking your head, yes.
Oh, no, I was gonna say that's fine.
Right, we all, and I think it is appropriate for our high school graduates to go experience part of the rest of the world.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Right, but they do, but I'm talking about them returning at an early working age.
who is it that the OST employs on a Tuesday and Wednesday night that would have kept them open?
Now, there's a labor.
It's not a retiree like myself
No,
or either
We
of
can't count
y'all.
the last 2 years, we're in extreme labor shortage in the entire United States.
But that was happening before what's been going on in the last 2 years.
When they were open.
All
So-
I'm saying is, we're looking at it different ways. Laura wants to speak.
Yeah,
I look
that's-
at it at the glass half full. You're looking at it as the glass is half empty.
Question. Clarification, really, Matt. Did I hear you say for the Airbnbs that your plan is calling for the property to be owner occupied?
Yes.
Or
Under place type 3, if you live in the residential areas, yes sir, the council gave direction that they want owner occupied only for Airbnb in those areas.
In place 3.
In place type 3,
But the other ones, 4 and 5, they don't have to.
then you don't have to. That's correct.
So the residential areas,
Because there are a lot of properties here that are Airbnb, are rental properties that are not owner occupied.
Well,
And that was
I-
a huge reason why our population density went down after this last census.
Now,
Believe me.
but with one of the clarifications on that, that was always pertaining to building a bunkhouse.
That's correct. yeah.
So there should, remember, this has not been finalized. So your home that is sitting there vacant, that you're just renting out
You can rent your house,
occasionally,
that's correct.
that is different. It's a rent house even if it's for
Yes,
a
ma'am, you can
weekend
rent the house.
or a month or 6 months. But if you're adding an additional property to an additional facility,
Secondary.
then one of them must be owner
That's
occupied.
correct.
That's the way I
That's
understood
correct.
the intent.
It's for the secondary unit.
But I
Okay.
just have one question.
Yeah.
Okay, in the, like where I live and stuff, so you're saying now that I could come back there and build me a bunkhouse to put somebody in? Where is it? I live at the Colony 7.
Yes.
See, I don't, that's a good idea. I left Sugarland to get away from that.
So you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people will do it.
You know, you want to get to a residential, you don't want to have
Well,
bunkhouses
and
in
so
the backyard.
in that area, that's place type 2,
3, I think.
place place type 3. So you still can't develop more than 40% of the total property of your land. So the footprints, your house and whatever other structures you build on it can't occupy more than 40% of the total land of your property.
And
That keeps it from becoming like every bit of your property is built on.
Yeah.
And then everybody, your neighbor's property is built on. And so it still keeps it sparse.
But see, I moved, that's why I chose Bandera to retire to, because I wanted to get away from that.
well, all I'm gonna say, and I'm looking at you, Elaine, because I know you fairly well too. These bunkhouses can't be bigger than those people that buy their little she sheds and he sheds. They can't be any bigger than that, and we've got them everywhere.
Well, I got mine,
But you understand, so you've got your she shed, so there you go.
but, yeah, that's my
Well,
garage.
city
Well, but I
council's
mean,
guidance on
yeah,
that.
I know.
that's exactly what we're talking about.
So city council's guidance on that was they couldn't be more than 800
That's
square
correct.
feet.
Correct. So that's,
The townhome, it allows for people to take care of their elderly parents or
well,
their elderly
everything,
friends.
anything.
Right,
Too, at
because
that
you
point,
couldn't,
too.
used to not be able to do that at all, put
Now,
an existing or.
There's a lot of elderly here and we need some
Yeah.
housing for them. I
Well,
heard
wasn't the Silver Sage bill in cottages?
They already have a waiting list out the.
They've got two more people on the waiting list than total cottages that they're looking to build in first phase.
I figured that, so.
There's a lot of opportunity in this community, and I moved here, we have a low crime rate, we have great people that live here, most people are polite. I know that I have a lot of, I've been a foster adopt parent for 20 years, and I would say quite a few of those kids would have come here just, they're not college kids, they like the country, they like the horse ranches, they like the simple life. We do need to be able to provide them a way to make a living and to be a productive citizen here, so I kind of dig they go working towards that.
Want me to go back?
Do we have any more questions? Laura?
I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Diane Carter, who owns a house at 410 12th Street. And Diane asked me to come bring some things to your attention. Her son works for a mortgage company, and when he saw the wording, and that's P4, the term commercial easily transitioned to a P5. He said that he felt that may require, if you go to sell your house, the person buying it to qualify for commercial loan. He felt that the words commercial and mixed use were big red flags. In the previous B2, it's a little softer wording. It says that these houses may be used for offices, studios, and light commercial. Is there a possibility of going back to that wording and omitting the word, easy transition to P5? She also suggested that in these residents, to make sure that they remain residents, that maybe the person, if they have a business there, that they have to live in that as well. Just a thought. And
Is that specific for the live-work buildings? Okay.
And she also asked if there could be any wording to encourage that these houses not be torn down, that they remain residents, so that we don't have things happen like at Pecan between Main Street and where the whole yellow house caused such controversy. So anyway, I presented what she asked me to.
That the houses on the land not be torn down?
Yes, that they remain houses and look like houses.
For which place type?
P4, where there's,
P4?
where there's, they can be mixed, residential or commercial.
And under the building types, they can only build a house form commercial, so they must look and function like houses under the way that the code is written.
But the description really doesn't reflect that in P4.
That's the way that the code is written, and we had this conversation as well. But, I mean, that's a commission vote if you all want us to soften that language. The verbiage, though, and the intent is very similar to B2. It is a direct correlation and transitioned from that district. The live-work classifications, we carried forward. We took this to city council for policy direction, and they said, carry forward live-work as it is now, and you all allow live-work in all of your districts. And so this is, the regulations basically say no more than 4 employees. They can't be reporting there and having people actually working in the house. But it's for people that work out of their houses, and that's what the live-work classification was for. With regard to place type 4, you can get a single-family conventional FHA 3% down loan and qualify to buy a mixed-use building. I am in the process of doing it now for an office building, actually, and that's possible, and you can do a normal 3% down on that. So just so you know that does that is
Well,
allowed.
our son works for a mortgage company, he's
Sure.
the one that raised the red flag.
No, it's really, I mean, and it is something to be mindful of, but I do believe that and it's going to be different lenders have different rule
Can they
sets.
request to be put in a different
Classification.
classification?
Yes, so commission, that would be something that if you all wanted to downzone the properties, you could do that within these hearings. Under the state law, you can accept someone going to a lower classification, but you cannot go to a higher classification. If they're requesting another classification that's up, we would have to re-notice and do public hearings again. You're not allowed to upzone, and this, y'all need to check legal, but and you may be allowed to under a city-wide rezoning, but I know under a conventional zoning case, you cannot go up, but you can go down. If the applicant is requesting that they want a lower classification at the time the citywide rezoning takes place, you can say this lot, and we'll go and change the map for the individual property owners if that's at the will of the commission.
What does she need to do?
I mean, we have not set a formal process for how this would be taking place. I mean, I don't know if it could just be verbal, and if the commission would be comfortable, and we would modify it. We have time between the public hearings to update these standards and change that. If the commission and the council think that's the appropriate thing.
Yeah. You said she's at what spot, Pecan and?
Oh, her house is 12th Street. It's that little red house that's right across from the county building. Right in the middle of the block.
She should write
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So that you have it documented. That way, if you do decide or don't decide.
I think
you
that's
have a whole
something that actually
process.
needs to come,
Right.
yeah, that's something that
It should
needs
be
to
a
come
map.
up in front of, because the way this was zoned out was to develop the density pattern of the city. And if we start
She's not here right now.
on 12th Street, she's on the edge of
P4 and
P4 and P5.
Oh yeah. Yep, you're right. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's on the edge of P4 and P5. And if she's wanting to go P3, then that's like a little island right in the middle of it. And the whole point of this is to go from tight in the center of the city on Main Street and ease out. I mean, there's nothing she can't do
And
in P4 that she couldn't do in P3.
And place type 4 is predominantly a residential area. It's supposed to look and function like residential, just with allowances for house form office, or so
I
that
think
it
if
looks.
you changed your description, I think should be fine.
Okay, that may be an easier thing to do.
Yeah.
That easy transition to P5 was a very big red flag.
And I'm not seeing what part of,
The very last sentence in the P4 description,
The P4 description.
on the,
Other place type, it's under the place type definitions.
place type definitions, yes.
is that what we've got handouts for tonight, or?
Here, I'll show you.
It was the one that was mailed out to them in the city bill.
Okay.
No,
No, it's, I know what you're talking about, Laura. It's,
You probably want to see that.
This one.
it says, would you like me to read it? It says the place type
We don't
mix.
have that.
It's in the actual plan though.
Right, I know, but we don't have that available to
Oh, I
us to
got you.
read tonight.
And I can read it aloud. It says the mixed place type functions as a smooth transition from commercial-oriented P5 core place type outward to establish the residential place type 3 neighborhood place type. P4 regulates a variety of building types ranging from smaller, more traditional commercial form buildings to intermixed house form commercial and detached residential residences. So that's the terminology, but it is a residential district with a transition upward.
The very last part of that last sentence is residential.
Residences, yeah.
So single family, it said.
Commercial, the word commercial is the big, is the red line.
Well, yeah,
But it's
but
already commercial.
it's already
But
got that
it's
with the
softer
current.
language in there.
Well, but it's a transit,
It's a transition area.
And it's,
No,
the word commercial is actually talking about the P5. If you read the sentence structure, it says the mixed place type functions as a smooth transition from the commercial-oriented P5 core to the place type outward established in residential P3 neighborhood. That's the way that it's the transition between those two districts is what it's trying to say. Maybe the sentence structure is wrong. I don't mind modifying this.
Yeah, if we can review that before
Yes,
it
sir.
goes up.
All right, we'll get that modified.
Strictly wording.
Okay. Yes, Tony?
We have a question over here. I'm gonna sort of try to, okay, so right now in our current zoning, we have a very vivid definition of duplex, single family, triplex apartments, RV, that kind of thing. So where does that type of building transition to the new placements?
So the individual building types are located in here, and can you restate I'm sorry, can you restate the
So-
question?
So specifically, they're in the commercial district right now, which doesn't allow houses. We only had one house there that was residential, and then we had a person in a business that moved in and started using it as a residential without getting any kind of approval for that. And so there's sort of, there's houses that are being used as commercial. And so if for some reason say there was a vacant lot, what could be built there
And it's in place type 5.
in place type 5?
They would be able to do side yards, rear yard. Here, I've got slides on this too. Go back.
So if those, we saw that list.
Yes, ma'am.
So edge yard, side yard, rear yard building types,
That's correct.
but there could be like, for instance, a duplex built there as long as it met that
Um,
criteria, or?
A duplex, it would have to have 70%, it would have to look like a commercial building. So the wording in the code says that if you're building in place type 5, the ground floor must have 70% glass. It must be brought up to the lot line. It needs to take up 80% of the lot. It's intended to create a uniform street edge in its building patterns. So it would need to function and look like a commercial building in that context. So it probably would, we did not code out specific ground floor residential. It's not coded out, but the building, if they're building a new building, would look like a commercial building.
And it would look like
Be
a
required.
commercial building and it could have 2 residents in it?
It
As
could,
long as it met that criteria?
as long as the building
So
met
the
that
duplex
criteria.
and stuff is, yeah, I mean, I know we
Yes, ma'am.
talked about, I'm kind of
Yeah.
sort of being devil's advocate and sort of reminding myself at the same time.
That is correct. There are very stringent standards for place type 5. It's your most formal environment. And so the standards in place type 5 are the most formal standards. And it's got very clear elements of how the building would relate to the street, how much of the lot it has to take up. And so those elements create your street edge. And so you don't have a tiny building and a long vacant lot. What that does, it creates and kills your walkable environment. To create a cohesive walkable environment from the river to North Main, you need that building environment, that street wall that makes you want to walk and carries your eye down. And so that's why those standards are.
See, I've got a lot P5 that you can't even get onto that lot. from the street.
Cannot own the lot from the street.
Right next to the Chevron Ice House.
Do you have an easement? The right of way?
No.
It's
There
landlocked?
is a guardrail between Highway 16 and that lot. And the lot's like this. So how in the world do you think I can do?
It sounds like you may have an undevelopable lot, or very
No,
difficult
it's
lot
not,
to develop.
because there is a spot up on the top.
You can cantilever a building off of it. I don't know,
Oh, come on.
I mean, if you
No,
say
no,
it's
no,
like
no, I
this.
mean, come on, I don't have the money to cantilever a building on that hill.
What do you wanna do with it?
I'm not quite sure.
Again, not that but with what you're saying right there, that I have to put in glass and this and that, it has to be so far from the street. It can't be from the street.
Yeah, I mean, there are anomalies, and so you can't code every anomaly.
Right.
Your lot sounds really complex.
Yeah,
We
I
have
mean,
to sit down
I
and,
think you would be.
And I've got,
Get through
of a
and again, I've
waiver.
got residents that is in B1 right now. My house is in B1.
oh, and B1, yeah.
And back up.
Okay.
That got translated to P.
And so if what you're telling me, and now that it's going to 5, if I want to do anything with that, I have to make it all glass.
So I'm thinking, so
I mean, I've got-
you're talking right next to Evaporate.
I
On
own
Highway
I
16.
own the
Yeah.
building.
That's the building.
So you're talking right there, Highway 16.
Yes,
So I think,
and then,
because that's the same, that's right next to the building, the other building we're talking about. That's the
Right.
residential right there on Highway 16.
right,
So I'm thinking Highway 16, and let me know what you think.
Alright,
Highway 16 and 12th Street doesn't actually go all the way through like it's shown on this map.
and 13th Street doesn't go.
no, they do exist.
They do
But the
exist.
right
You
of way
have
Right.
to accept them.
Do what?
The right of way is
From-
platted.
The right of way is platted.
Yes, on Highway 16, from 12th Street to
13th Street.
whatever, where, from 12th to 13th on both sides, I think should be a P4.
Okay.
Because we don't have, the way that works right there, you've got McMillan's on one side, which is not right close to the right of way. You've got those other 2 buildings, 3 buildings, because there's also Leah's building,
Yes.
that are right there.
Right.
None of those are 70% glass frontage, and there's a sidewalk on one side, but on the other side, with the way everything lays out, there is no walkability right there. So I'm thinking recommending that for a P4.
Because like I
would
said,
make
if I ever
more
try to
sense
sell
than P5.
Right.
the property that's the residence,
Yes, sir.
again, I run into the same thing, that the mortgage companies would say, oh, whoa,
Yeah, you
that's
would.
B1,
One over from the
that's
gateway.
B1, and you
So it would be
want to buy it as a
heritage
residence?
from
they
12 to
will write
13.
Yes,
a loan
sir.
on it.
I would agree with that. And,
Is that
and
whole section?
what we did
So
with,
those 2 blocks on either side of 16th, I think should be P4 versus P5.
and I just want to clarify, the reason that they show up as P5 is because they were zone B1, and we did not want to downzone anyone's property. That would be a takings.
Right.
Now, if the community wants to do that and downzone them, that would be at the will of the council and the community. You have the ability, but when we were doing the translation, we did not downzone anyone, and that was the intent. So there may be anomalies where a lower zoning classification actually makes sense, and those local nuances we can definitely go back and calibrate back in. So that's really helpful.
It's a good line, it's a good cap there.
Oh,
Yes.
I have these flagged.
Question, I guess, tagging off of this, I'm Terry Darden, I'm born and raised in Bandera, have some property down on Blue. Some of our property was put into P5, I guess, and I think you may have just answered the question, why, because it was zoned higher to start with. The question I have is, how do you get it, if you want it in P3 or R3 residential 3, you don't want glass down across from the Frisbee park. I just can't imagine a glass building down there, if you could build down there. But the first things first is, how do you get it from P5 to P3 if that's what we decided we wanted? Is that the Planning and Zoning Commission, is that the city manager, administrators, is that the
So,
council?
once
What's the process?
Once city council adopts this place classification, then they should also be, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Administrator, they should also be putting in a process in which
We could do it.
that is done, correct?
That's the
Commissioner, we could do this through this process. We can create a form for residents now to let them request, I'm currently this zoning, and they acknowledge that they're requesting a lower classification. We go and make it, and then at the time that you're doing the citywide rezoning, they get classified to the requested classification that they're seeking. If you do this, I mean, we can create a form for you all, get that online, and let citizens have that ability. It may be a really clean process. We can file the forms, update the maps, and then inform you all of what changed based on citizens' request.
Okay.
And that would be easier than after the fact coming in and asking for a variance and getting enough consensus to let you have a variance,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, sir.
What do we need to do to make that request that we do that?
So we're requesting it right now that they make a form.
Okay.
They make a form that people can go in there, and then before it's presented to city council for final approval, it reflects on this.
We can get this online tomorrow. So we'll do this quickly.
So what's the process? I request it and it's approved, or I request it and you consider it for approval?
I imagine what would happen is we would get the request, we would update the map, and then inform the commission of the council of the request that we received and show them the two map comparisons, and then let them make the policy decision.
There's going to have to be a review process. That way people aren't right on 16th Street requesting to be P2.
Right.
So there's got to be some kind of review process to make sure it makes sense before city council goes in.
And this would happen before the November 16th meeting? Or?
Yes, we can get this online tomorrow. We'll create a process and get it up tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be on the city's webpage. If you click the link where it says Comprehensive Master Plan, it'll send you to a link that has the actual document and all the files, as well as the maps, and then we'll have that request form.
Do we have the ability to let it be on paper here too? Because not
That's a great idea.
Not everybody has computers around
send
here.
So once
send
it's
it to
out,
Keely.
we can email it to Keely and to David, and
Yeah, we'll just email it.
and so somebody can
Come and pick
show up
the
at
form.
City Hall.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then what would be the best process for that once
We'll process
they get it back? They scan it, email it back to y'all?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do
Right.
that.
So if we make it at least,
We're actually hoping, so we're having a planning and zoning meeting next week as well before it goes to city council for recommendation. To see if there's any requests in that time, y'all can review those requests next week as well, and then have it processed into the current zone that hasn't been approved yet.
When's it going to city council?
Next week's city council meeting is Thursday.
Here's
Here at 6.
here's the dates here.
Yeah, that's
November 8th?
November 4th. No, 4th. It's November 4th.
Alright, this is gonna take so long.
Okay.
Here are the dates. Okay.
There it is.
And so these will be the next dates. There'll be a November 3rd reading and recommendation to City Council by the Planning Commission. November 4th will be the City Council public hearing and first reading. November 16th will be the City Council public hearing and consideration of adoption. And then there will be an after party on the 16th as well, which we'll get more details out as soon as we can.
There's one thing we like to do in Bandera.
Oh, we're not confused.
That's pretty
Alright,
confident.
so November 3rd, we already have a PNC meeting for that, so we just have it on the agenda to review.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
Alright, awesome. Anybody else have any other questions?
And I know that the lady in the blue building.
Okay.
What's your motion to close the public hearing.
Can we get a motion?
I make a motion that the public hearing is over, period.
I second it.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, none opposed. Time is 7:22. This meeting is adjourned.
Collage of the chocolate.